Hello everyone, and welcome to this very first Direct Industry podcast with VirtualExpo. I'm Camille Rustici, I'm the chief editor of DirectIndustry magazine, and today we're recording from our offices in Marseille, in France. We decided to launch a podcast because we're seeing a growing demand from industrial companies around web visibility and digital presence. In my interviews with executives from industrial companies, the same questions keep arising. How can we stay visible online when so much is changing as AI takes over the web? Just yesterday, Google confirmed the complete fusion of web search with dynamic AI rollout starting in summer. So to discuss this topic, I'm joined by Dante Swift, marketing strategist at the VirtualExpo Group, which is DirectIndustry magazine publishing company. For the past 20 years, Dante has been helping hundreds of industrial companies improve their online visibility. So Dante, to start very simply, what's going on and how can B2B companies keep up?
Well, you put it very well. Thank you, Camille, for the introduction. You put it very well. Google announced yesterday basically what amounts to the complete fusioning of dynamic AI, as you said, with traditional research. What does that mean? Well, I have my little pet phrase for it. I call it the one-page web. It means that tomorrow, when you're searching on Google, normal Google, instead of having to go from website to website to access the source of the information, Google's going to serve it on a plate, so to speak, on a single page, a page which is fluid and which is dynamic. So obviously, the number of clicks are going to go down because you need less to click. The information is brought right up to you. So that's pretty dramatic. All of that's changing. But what people need to remember is that the fundamentals of what drives visibility is not changing.
And so what are those fundamentals?
Well, a little bit of history, I think that already helps. Google's a pretty amazing company. They started in 1998, and right at the beginning when they started, they wanted to be a useful research tool. Humble ambition. And for usefulness, there are basically two pillars. One is that they want to provide information that's trustworthy, because a useful research tool must provide stuff that's trustworthy, not stuff that's going to create problems. And the second pillar is that the information they provide must be rich, not just regurgitating constantly the same information. That hasn't changed. Those two fundamental principles haven't changed. The problem was that in the intervening years, the technology wasn't capable of really judging, is this company trustworthy? That's why there's a lot of dodgy companies on Google time to time. And the technology wasn't capable of assuring that the information that you were being given was genuinely new and innovative. As a result, we went through this phase where we had to do the second best thing, which is to just stuff websites with keywords and backlinks, and that of course created a culture of abuse where you could game the system to gain visibility. Now the machine is no longer stupid, the machine is very intelligent, as we all know, and so Google is able to really deliver better on its original ambition, which is to deliver information that's trustworthy and information which is useful.
And so concretely, what does that mean for the industrial companies that are watching this podcast?
Well, as I said, there are those two pillars, trust and the usefulness of the information. Now let's look at trust first. Google has introduced a new concept which is called EEAT, and that has become, I think, the heartbeat, the core of Google indexation. Trust, if you like, the EEAT is the price of entry. If you want your website to be indexed or to be crawled by Google, you've got to make sure that Google can verify that the information you're publishing is trustworthy. If it's not, Google won't index you. Now, one that people forget is that the dark web has become huge, and the dark web isn't just websites that are bad, it's also websites that Google decides for whatever reason not to index. Google does not index everyone out there. In fact, Google only indexes now a tiny percentage of the number of websites. If you want to be indexed, you've got to make sure your information is verifiable. So that's EEAT. Let's break it down. The first E is experience. The second E is expertise, then authority, and then ending with trust. Now, this is basically a simple flow. It's a formula of the natural creation of trust. You can't have expertise if you don't have prior experience. You can't say you have authority if you don't have expertise, which people recognize. Authority comes not from you, it comes from others in your field. And you can't have trust if no one in your field estimates you as a reliable actor. So if you don't have authority, you can't have trust. It's a natural formula of the human creation of trust. It is not the algorithmic creation of trust, but because the algorithm has become so sophisticated, it's as good as a human being, and it can actually work out now whether trust really exists in the real world.
It's a bit like our e-magazine. What do you say about the EEAT of our online publication?
Well, it's a nice plug, but it's also a plug that is fair play. It just so happens that I wanted to look at the importance of the e-magazine in Google's eyes prior to this interview. And so I went that one step further. I decided to look at the importance of Camille Rustici, our chief editor of the eMag. Now, how does Google structure the EEAT? Behind the scenes, Google has what's called its knowledge graph. Its knowledge graph is basically, it's more of a map than a graph. It's a sort of IT cartography of all of the actors in the world, actors whether they are people, whether they are organizations, whether they are historical figures, or even concepts like E equals MC squared. All of human knowledge is mapped here, and Google is interested in the relationships between what it calls these entities. So you might be happy to know that Camille Rustici is a recognized journalistic entity on the knowledge graph. That means that you're not a hack journalist. That means that Google has verified that you have genuine experience meeting manufacturers and innovators in business, in industry, that you have genuinely transformed that experience into validated expertise. That we can see by your professional your professional work, the organisations where you have worked. For example, you've interviewed NASA, you've worked at French radio stations prior to VirtualExpo. So that experience has been validated in concrete expertise. Google has been able to verify from websites such as articles that you've written that have been quoted on Wikipedia, for example, that you have authority. Your articles have also been quoted in the English Parliament, British Parliament. Did I say English? You have to edit that out. The British Parliament. And so therefore Google is able to say, well, on balance, we can trust Camille Rustici when she writes an article because she has paid her dues in the real world. It's the real world that Google's interested in. And so yes, the e-magazine is in that sense a site which is more than capable of sending out signals of trust, EEAT signals to Google.
Okay, so we're glad to hear that we have a good EEAT. And then moving back to the industrial companies, so we understand that they really need to step up on these topics. They cannot ignore those topics. If you had to give one do and one don't for each pillar of EEAT, what would that be? Let's start with the first E, which is experience.
Yes, well, there's one principle which unites those four letters in EEAT. It's verifiability. When you communicate, you have to make sure the information you're communicating on is verifiable. And you have to make sure that you are transparently showing your expertise, for example. So let's take expertise. If you are a company that is in the forefront of some kind of new technical research, well, your expertise means the experiments that you're doing. It means the prototypes that you're making. It means the collective expertise of the various experts that you have employed in your company. And so your expertise is also something that when you've employed someone that has that worked prior to your company at other organizations, rather than pretending that this person's life began with your company, you should be proud of the fact that they come from this university or have worked at this great research center. And that's information that you should go ahead and publish on your website, even though it was prior to them joining your company. Because all of that expertise accumulates, all of that experience accumulates, and you are the beneficiary of that because that person is now working with you.
And then expertise.
Expertise, well, that's qualifications, certifications. That's something which is palpable. Don't just say, for example, that you have an ISO 9000 certification. Put the certificate with the certifying agency that was government approved on your website. Allow people to download it. even if they don't download it, Google's going to crawl that. And Google's going to go to the verifying agency's website, and Google's going to crawl their database, and Google's going to be able to match, yes, it's true, this company was verified in this year by this certifying agency. And every certification has a expiry date, so you need to keep that up to date, and Google will be able to verify that. You can't do better than that.
And what about authority and then trust? That might be a bit harder, no, to...
Yes, because you're absolutely right, because this is a formula for the natural creation of trust. So the first two E's, that's when the ball is in your side of the court. You have your experience, you can demonstrate your expertise. You cannot create authority, you cannot create trust. That's created in the minds of others. So first let's look at authority. Authority is other actors in your specialized field. Now, to create authority, yes, you can do a bit of lobbying. Yes, you can do a bit of networking, but fundamentally, if you start paying to have other people talk about you, paying to have backlinks to you, Google's going to red flag that. That's a red flag. You can't buy authority. It's fundamentally organic and natural. So you need to make sure you're visible. You need to communicate in a way that resonates with other journalists and other people in your field. But Camille, you're the first person to agree with me that if you're going to cover someone on the e-magazine for Direct Industry, it's because they've really got something to say, and not because they've wined and dined you. So you're obviously only going to get that authority building up slowly over time if you have something to say, if you have expertise which you're putting into practice to create innovative products, and if your expertise is grounded in the real world and you can demonstrate that. It's paying your dues, and Google's going to monitor that.
And all that make the trust.
And all of that makes the trust. Now, there are some things you can do to make this trust. I mean, it's possible that clients that know you trust you, but Google doesn't know they trust you. Well, there are some things you can do about trust. You can't create the trust. Obviously, the trust it resides in the minds of other people. What you can do is you can make that trust verifiable. So that means have a Trustpilot entry on Trustpilot or any other kind of independent third-party verification website. Expose yourself to criticism. Don't be afraid of criticism. So allow unfiltered critical comments on your own website. Reply to those comments, so you're showing that you're reactive and that you take on board comments. I'll give you a quick story. There's a company called Ahrefs, which went from a tiny actor in the field of SEO advice, and has now become the second biggest SEO company, advising company, just behind SEMrush. One of the things that enabled them to really leapfrog all the other players was by actively engaging people on Reddit, exposing themselves to criticism, and boy did they get criticism. You know, when they increased their prices, oh my God, did they get mud thrown at them. But the simple fact that they were prepared to take that criticism and respond to it, even though they couldn't necessarily change hearts and minds, is recognized by Google, not the fact that they're criticized, but recognized by Google the fact they're real, and you can at least trust the fact that they enter the fray in the real world, and they don't shy away from that, and they benefited from that. Their presence on Reddit, though sometimes painful, has vastly contributed to their increased visibility and the overall success of the company.
So what you're saying, and we need that to reassure the companies that are listening to us, that this is actually accessible to these companies.
Yes, anyone can do this. Especially if you're an industrial manufacturer. Industrial manufacturing, people come from an engineering background where you tend to think that the only thing you can say is just how great your product is. You tend to hide away. It's not really an industry renowned for its kind of flamboyant marketing. Well, you should now be much more open about the professional careers that your engineers and designers have had. You should be much more transparent about the prototypes that you've done. Maybe film your testing rooms where sometimes the prototype doesn't work, and film it on a smartphone. You don't have to generate sort of overproduced corporate videos that just turn people off. Do podcasts like this, where your chief designer is being challenged and interviewed by a journalist, and in a non-scripted interview. I mean, expose yourself to this. If you believe in your products and you believe in your expertise, then you'll land on your feet. But what you're saying to Google is that I'm not controlling the environment. I don't have fake comments on my own forum, but I can go onto Reddit or Substack and expose myself to an uncontrolled, unmoderated environment where it's real people talking about me, where I'm building real authority. Yeah, anyone can do this.
So you spoke a lot about trust, but there's not only trust that's important in this new background.
Because trust is, just to go back to that key point, the EEAT, trust, is the price of entry. It's what allows you to be indexed by Google. And not just by Google, but also by the other LLMs that pay lip service, more than lip service, sorry, that do follow the same kinds of rules. But it doesn't guarantee you're going to be promoted, boosted, put on top, even though rankings are disappearing, but often quoted. It doesn't guarantee the frequency by which you appear. It just guarantees that you will be crawled and indexed. But of course the question now is, well, I want to be indexed a lot. I want to be frequently quoted in LLMs. I want to be frequently proposed on Google or ranked highly, but in the new Google frequently displayed. And so now we go from trust to the other concept. The other concept is utility. Now let's go back to 1998. When Google founded, they wanted to do two things. Their ambition was to be a useful search tool. That meant only give you information that's trustworthy, but also give you information that is diverse, that's rich, that progresses your knowledge and understanding. That for them is a definition of a useful research tool. It hasn't really changed. So okay, we've dealt with trust. So how do you now distinguish yourself? Well, that's the utility. Now, there are two versions of utility. If you're an agglomerator, like some marketplace, like our marketplace DirectIndustry, then to be useful, you have to help people execute a task, okay? Because you're not creating original information, you're allowing people to compare and select. Okay, well, that's us. We've got to be particularly useful to execute a task. When it comes to creators of products, manufacturers, it's not the executing of the task on your website that's so important, even though that's beneficial. It's the generation of unique information that advances the human's understanding of the challenges of your sector. And unique information can take many different forms. It obviously can mean groundbreaking technology, but it's not exclusively that, you know.
Because it's not always possible to innovate all the time, to have a new product every year for a company.
Yes, exactly, and we can't all be innovating, and also Google doesn't want people to game the system by creating pointless innovations, no, which will obviously destroy the trust at the end of the day. No, unique information that advances the understanding of the sector can come in many forms. So obviously it can be new technology, it could be new data that is reinforcing a consensus about certain types of technology. So this is original data that you have developed through your own research and testing, and you've got to be very transparent about the sample sizes or the process of getting that data. It could be new arguments about new perspectives, about challenges coming up in a market that may be impacted by geopolitical or technological changes, a new way of looking at an old problem. It could be, for example, organizational. It doesn't have to be technological. Anything that gives a new perspective, which gives new information that reinforces the consensus, or new perspectives or technology that challenge the consensus, that is information gain.
Do you have a concrete example of a company that has encountered this issue and has been able to find a solution?
Absolutely. I mean, we all have examples of new technology. You only have to think of the Apple smartphone for that. Let's look at an example of a company which didn't have new technology but still was able to vastly impose itself in terms of information gain. A good example is a company called onsemi, semiconductor manufacturer. Back in 2020 to 2022, they were a pretty middling company in their sector. They were not renowned for their technology. and they were basically playing the same game that everyone else was playing, which was squeeze your margins, negotiate on volume. And they were selling semiconductors like a commodity product. They were the first, I don't know if they were the first to realize it, but they were first to take the plunge and change the narrative about semiconductors. They realized that with the concentration of the chain of production in Taiwan and the geopolitical insecurity with Chinese ambitions and also the huge revolution in electrical cars and the need for semiconductors and smartphones that was just exponential, they realized that there was a real risk involved for manufacturers requiring semiconductors in terms of the supply chain security. They completely changed the narrative. Not only did they not introduce any new technology, they reduced their product range. They cut it in half. I think they cut down from 400 to 200 different types of products, introduced no groundbreaking new technology. They simply talked about the supply chain risk, and they changed their offer. They restructured so that they could guarantee the supply chain geopolitically speaking, and they started to sell a 10-year guarantee on semiconductor supply. And they talked about risk as a marketing, as an identifier of semiconductors' added value. That completely changed the market. And the beautiful thing, all the other big actors like Infineon and Sony followed suit. But because they were the first to say it, they historically won that territory of info gain. No one can take that away from them now until the narrative changes again. How often does a narrative in an industrial sector change? Normally it stays the same for at least generational. They are now historically associated with as being the progenitor of the supply chain management and risk management in semiconductors. No one can take that away from them now. And they did that, I repeat, without having any technological innovation. It was pure conceptual information gain, and it's a great example.
Okay, so thanks for this very interesting use case. That's pretty clear, but what's interesting is that we hear less about EEAT or about InfoGain, as you mentioned, and more about acronyms such as, let me name them, GEO, LLMO, AEO, AAO, SXO. So how can these two things, EEAT and InfoGain, be so important?
When no one's talking about them. Yeah. It's true that there isn't a day goes by or a week goes by that you get I get some newsletter saying, why everyone should do the GEO or the 5 rules to improve your LLMO, and all of that is symptomatic of a malaise in the industry of SEO advice. How to go about this? I mean, I actually counted the number of these acronyms that end with O that are being taken seriously, and I counted at least 15 that are being taken seriously by the SEO industry, whereas they really shouldn't be taken seriously. The O is for optimization, and they all end with O. And EEAT doesn't end with O, and InfoGain isn't even an acronym. It's a descriptor, information gain. So what's going on? First of all, why are people talking about all these new acronyms and not talking about as much about EEAT? People are talking about EEAT. Very few people are talking about information gain. There are two principal reasons. The first reason is that, and this goes to the malaise in the industry. The industry of web advice itself is a child of the old web when the machine was dumb, and the only way you could get close to trustworthiness and get close to useful information was by gaming the machine with keyword stuffing and buying backlinks. Originally it wasn't keyword stuffing, it was just honest keywords, honest natural backlinks, and of course because these were two crude levers, it was an open market to abuse. I will buy backlinks, I will unnecessarily stuff my content with keywords, and my visibility will go up. And to a certain extent, that worked. It was gaming the system because the machine was dumb. So optimization, frankly, means gaming system. Now, fast forward to today where the machine is not dumb. The machine is incredibly intelligent. The machine is so intelligent it can in many cases perfectly simulate or even anticipate better human behavior than some people I know. Well, we're no longer optimizing for a dumb machine. We're optimizing for a highly intelligent machine. In other words, we're optimizing for humans. We're not optimizing for machines. In fact, there's a word for that. It's called marketing. Think of pre-internet marketing. It was about build your brand, build the notoriety of your sub-brand models, build trust, have a USP, unique selling proposition. Well, trust, USP, that's the same thing as EEAT and InfoGain. We're going back to the future, guys. It's back to the fundamentals. This is natural human law. This is not something you can hack. You can't hack a USP. You either have it or you don't. You can't hack trust. You've either, by dint of your integrity, built trust or not. These are unhackable. And the problem is that the SEO advice industry is a child of the era of mechanic manipulated hackable web. And that era is over. And so they're bringing out all these new acronyms because they're panicking. Because they want to create, here's an acronym that begins with O, FOMO, fear of missing out. They want, by an acronym, they're creating the sense in you, oh my God, I've got to learn another thing. You don't. In fact, you should ignore all of that. The only acronym that ends with O, which you need to keep, is the good old-fashioned SEO. It hasn't changed. It's the only honest acronym. That means you do need some backlinks, natural backlinks. You do need keywords, otherwise how the hell can we know what you're talking about? But that's it. That's the price of entry. That's not in the price of entry. It just means that you could be indexed. Now you've got to build trust. Okay, then I will index you. Now you've got to have a USP. Now I'm going to put you first.
So the conclusion is back to basics, back to fundamentals.
It's back to the fundamentals.
And it's good news.
It's good news because we're back to the natural human law of what created real, genuine brands. I'm not saying everything was rosy in the past. There's a new urgency for trustworthiness because of AI facilitates phishing and everything like that. But we're back to the fundamental laws, which is that trust is created in the heads of others, not by hacking code. And if you don't have a USP, then you won't have standouts. No one's going to talk about you, which is good, yeah, because we can no longer manipulate these things.
But that means that industrial companies, you should change your mindset today.
That's right. It's a huge mindset. I mean, that we've just gone through a period of 25 years of optimizing things, optimizing for dumb machines. So if you do this, you'll get this. If you do that, you'll get that. That's finished. It's over, and people have a hard time accepting that. We've got to rewire our machines in here to stop thinking optimizing, but start thinking what we used to think in the past. I used to work in an advertising agency in the pre-internet days, and we talked about brand standout, brand personality, brand integrity. We talked about our USP, our unique selling proposition. It's back to that because the machine is no longer dumb. The machine is as if not more intelligent than human beings. And when you start optimizing for that kind of machine, you're no longer gaming it. You're actually giving it information that can be verified. Are we making this up? Is it true? Do other people corroborate what we're saying? Do people on forums corroborate that and give you trust? And is our unique selling proposition really unique? Or do we at least have a unique voice in the market like OmSemi had? So we're back to basics. It's the end of manipulation. It's a good thing, but there's a lot of destabilization because the clicks are going down for the technical reasons we mentioned earlier, which is creating a perfect environment for this inflation of acronyms. Oh, if I just learn SXO, SXO, if I just learn GEO, then my clicks will go back up. No. Don't confuse the two.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dante, for all this information and this practical advice. And we'll see you soon in another podcast. Yes. Thank you very much for following us.